Um, I watched um I watched the the uh and end of an era documentary last night. The last two episodes. I didn't I didn't even realize I didn't even realize that they were up until it was already, well, I was gonna watch Real Housewives on Peacock, but then it showed me that I don't have Peacock anymore, and I couldn't figure out how to get it back to payment and why this happened, and I thought I had a plan, so it got me kind of worried. But so um, then I saw that and Aris Aristora was up the last two episodes. So um, I was watching that and actually I had like a comb here. My hair looks a mess, but they were not like very long. Um, anyway, like didn't either less than an hour like to each episode was left. So um, and the second to last one was called Marjorie. It was, I guess, like that's the name of her Taylor's grandmother. I guess you'd call maternal grandmother, who was an opera singer, Marjorie, and she has a song for her called Marjorie from one of her albums. I think Evermore. Not sure, but um, and it was like family. Uh-huh. Centered like a episode, and how that she would say like, "Well, Andrea, that's Taylor's mother, Marjorie's daughter, and then Marjorie's Taylor's grandmother." So, um, said, I think that actually, there's a really uh there's a really cute opening. Um, uh, I kind of feel like putting my hair up, but I would need a brush. Um, where I guess it's Taylor, just like a baby, and then she's at Marjorie's house, I think, because you see the pictures behind, and like Taylor's, I think, just on the piano, just going, and Marjorie's like, "Oh, we need to get her a piano." Now she needs one. Um, so it goes into like, and then I guess Marjorie died when she was like when Taylor was like 13. And so anyway, and they were going to Nashville. Nashville. Taylor was 13. And so anyway, Andrea says, "You know, I believe that you no, 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 at a young age where you're going." And I thought, I thought I thought about that, um, about myself, like if that's true, and going back as far as I can remember where I thought I was going, and I do remember from a very, like, young age believing, that I was going to die before I'm 40, that I would definitely not make it that long, and especially that I would get murdered. And it came back to me, and I think it comes back to me sometimes, that I knew I wouldn't make it that far. Um, and, I think, yeah, I didn't never thought I'd make it on, like, Taylor's level or anything. So many of the things I fear would come true have, and it's like the rest I'm just waiting for it to fall into to place. I I was thinking that if I'm gonna get murdered, that I just kind of, like, would prefer it to be, like, quicker. I mean, I don't know, maybe you wanna, like, think if you're, like, bleeding out, like, some minutes to think about your life, I guess, but I don't wanna be, like, tortured. But I like to think I could just let go and be like, "Okay, like, this has happened, and I've waited for this moment to come, and I couldn't stop it." Like, everything else and trying to fight it is just like, I hope I can just let go, and I feel, like, afraid that I won't be able to, like, and cause myself more suffering, um, like, when I had lost my channel, like, I couldn't just let it go, like, the pain, because you wanna hold on to something you can't, and I don't want that to happen, like, with my life. It's taken from me, like, my channel, and I hope I can just let go, but I almost feel like, why didn't it just happen already? Like, it's just, waiting, like, and I don't think it'll be that much longer. So I think about my life and just how much suffering it is, and I feel like I have my Rex bruise. They used to have the bruise so bad, but I fell. It's like maybe I could be with Rex again, and my mom, my aunt, my I feel like I've been doing my best for sure, and everything still like falls apart, and I didn't have much, but I'm like, girl, but these were my babies. I try not to. I try to. That's 32, really? Did your uncle tell you that? I, uh I, ah, I got this, candles for Christmas. It's the only, it's the only Christmas present I got this year. Someone sent it to me, one of you. I usually I wouldn't use it because you know I like my candles. And there's 12 and they all smell really nice. And you can oh, that's really nice. Put the lid on. And I just keep holding and walk around the house with it. And I think, why am I like so stupid? I keep holding this box. I think it makes me feel like I matter. Like everybody has something to open for Christmas, but then I do too. Because I have this box. So I tell myself, you must matter something. I feel really lost and really lonely. I was really scared, but then I I do feel like I'm doing my best, you know. I I'm humble enough to admit I don't know everything. I don't even think I really know a whole lot. But then I'm also scared, so I feel I'm like doing my best. And it's like if you had cancer, you know. Actually, there's a great documentary, not documentary, I'm so sorry. It's based on a true story series called Apple Cider Vinegar on Netflix. True story about this girl, young girl in Australia, like an influencer who like didn't treat her cancer and died because this other girl like pretended she had cancer, like a thing too, and cured it with like apple cider vinegar. And so like that's why it's called that, 'cause it's like a thing. And she just pretended that it cured her. So what I mean in myself is like if somebody says like this apple cider vinegar, that will cure your cancer, right? So you're just being like stupid and wasteful to do all this chemo and hurt yourself and the money and like because yeah, you're causing yourself harm actually by doing the chemo because really you could just take the apple cider vinegar. And then in that moment it's like you so want that to be true. Like you want that to be true. You do an enema or whatever. That's the real thing people did. And then you live like don't you who wouldn't want that to be true? So much easier, right? My hair looks so stupid. But yeah, what are you risking on the other side? It's it's your life, it's all that you have. So and you want it to be true. You just want to know how they know. Because like what you're risking is like the most important thing, you know, to you. And I feel that a lot. Like I don't think people understand like how hard I'm trying and to take a leap of faith if I fall and it's actually like a you know a 17-foot drop to like concrete. It's a leap of faith to you shouldn't have taken, but you trust. And if all you're asking is, okay, but how do you know it's safe to leap? And the answer is only like, well, I just know. You can get like hated for that, but it's also like you just damned either way, aren't you? You know? I woke up this afternoon. Yeah, it was late. It was after like 2:30. And at first I'm like, oh, Stella, how could you sleep so late? But it's it, you know, I was up watching the Taylor Swift documentary, and I also am like, but I got sleep. So that's good. But also, I'm just trying to get through this. So I wake up and she wanted, I think it was like 284. And I gave her 300 because she needed to put that in and say, okay. And I just woke up and I know people will hate me for this. But then it said, do not understand. I'm really trying. I'm really trying to protect the last that I have left. And it's Christmas. And I'm scared. And I'm alone. I'm trying my best. It's, I told myself, she had said before, when she was here, that this time of year people do Christmas bonus. Um, for Rex. God, I miss him so much. I wish I could call him in, the big guy. I'm sorry. So I told myself, well, this is like a Christmas bonus, right? And this is the only Christmas bonus I got this year, but it means the world to me. Sorry. I didn't want my life to be like this. I've lost so much. I'm trying so hard. I don't know if you want me to be live like tomorrow or anything, but I think I will. Because I'm very lonely and I'm afraid. And doing this, if I can. It's like about the only thing I have left, so I really keep trying, um, to feel like I still matter to someone out there, and if they're watching. Um, so, um, yeah, so that was my thing so far. I guess I haven't been up terribly long. I gave her that money to her friend through the Zelle. Um, I have things I have to pay. I just keep taking out of what little savings I have left from, so I kind of wait till the end of the month to just do it, to pay bills. And I know it's almost the 24th. Maybe I'll do it tonight before bed. That's my plan of the day. Okay, so last night, before I before after the shows, um, oh, look how good we're doing. This so much. Okay. Um, but tonight we're starting on chapter 7, living in a suitcase. Um, so I did look up his hyperactive video, but he said it was so the song, I don't know why it wasn't a hit, and I didn't like it, I'll tell you what. The video especially. I mean, maybe in some context the song could work for whatever, but I didn't find it that phenomenal. The video I thought, well, Simon Cowell will say indulgent, self-indulgent. I'm sure there's something you could be appreciated out. He moves his head a lot. It's very like, obviously I can't play here, but he's a like and it just, like, constantly, like, that his head, like, he's very impressed with how he moves his head, I guess. Um, and that he thought, um, this was very the height of brilliance. Why is it not charting so high? I don't know. I'll tell you, I did actually like the band. I had looked up that Prefab Sprout. I I thought it was good, actually. I've listened to about 3 of the songs and, like, an album review, and I had supper and, like, so maybe I'll listen to more but I was like, close my eyes and I'm like, "Yeah, I could see um, I could see how people like this." And even his a hyperactive, I'm sure it's okay, but the way you're acting, like, "Why wasn't my entire pop star career saved of this?" I mean, didn't look up the Live Aid. I know I think you did, Terry, with David Bowie. Only those things so far, but we're picking up there today. We're, like, right after that Wembley Live Aid. Um, my wife passed away 18. I'm so sorry. So that'd be, like, second Christmas. I've heard, people say that the second year is even harder because some people will start to say, "Well, that's 18 months ago. That's 2 years ago. That wasn't even last year, right?" And yet you still have all that pain. So it may even my heart goes out to you because it may even be harder, you know? Okay, I don't know what you're saying in Russian, but, was it 9? I don't know that many Russian words. Okay, um, I'm really confused. On my hair. Mm. I found this on the ground. I have these, like, shorts on. Um, I could put these heels on too, I guess. Then, like, like, satin that I was afraid if I turned around and only wore this, if it would look, not what word should I say? Not clear, it's some shorts until I say something. That's what I should say. Uh, my head. And, that's the thing. What's normal, you get so scared. It's so sad, and I was like, "Oh, well, I, should be better than that," but there are people I found out, like, they have faint because the in, the fear, it's very intense. Then I don't mm, knock on wood, I don't do that, but it does is a number on your body, some on your system, and I'm just, like, constantly so hard, so, um, I'm trying even if I'm you know, the only one that really understands how much pain I'm in. I'm trying to, tell myself, "Estelle, it's okay, like, you're not so perfect here because, you're not showing it how much you're really suffering, but you are. So it may look like on the outside you're doing a truly horrible job, but maybe if people knew it's inside, they would say, "Wow, it's they're doing okay, actually, not the worst person in the world, you know?" Maybe I should try to find a Christmas dress for tomorrow or something, but maybe not red, right? My strategy has been mostly to try to avoid thinking that it's Christmas. Um, well, that's kind of strange because I got that Santa there all year long. But yeah, because I got it what this spring. Mm, try to tilt the computer mm, more to this corner. I'll see when I pull you up if that works. But mm, yeah, I think so. Oh, thank you, Jerry. I'm not seeing myself yet. Okay. Okay. All right. What did we say? Chapter 7. Living in a suitcase. After Live Aid, I went on a fishing trip with George Clinton to relax. The dreadlock funkmeister was living in Miami and spending odd days in the Bee Gees studio there, recording an album called Some of My Best Jokes Are Friends. He'd asked me to fly down there and put some keyboard and vocal parts on his new album. But today, he was in no particular hurry. He chartered a large skippered fishing boat, and we flopped about in the Atlantic swell, in close company to several other charter vessels, all following a school of albacore tuna. We were 10 miles out to sea, yet I could still see the tall buildings of downtown Miami on the horizon like a mirage in the hazy morning sun. Distance can be deceptive. George sat in a swiveling captain's chair at the stern of the boat, rolling joints in the sunshine, replaying rough mixes of his studio tracks from the night before on a large boombox. Just as he was dozing off, the skipper would yell, "Fish on!" and George would spring into action, hit a button on his electric rod, and reel in yet another 50-pound albacore. Then, with the skipper's help, let the struggling creature, club it with a baseball bat, and throw it into a giant ice chest before settling back into his captain's chair for a snooze. Having a studio and like listening to that on the boombox, it's like it reminds me like when I was watching the Taylor Swift documentary, like throughout there be times like last night, the show from recording the life of a showgirl. Before that was the Torture Poets. So the thing is, it just so like obviously like I don't really like make music. I'd love to. Like I kind of envious actually of the thrill, the joy it looks like it must feel like to make music like that. And she has one scene where she goes to the guys, what's his name, Fishback and um Max Martin. Um, they're like a creative team producers and with her on the album. And apparently, like they're in Sweden, like Max Martin, he doesn't leave like Sweden. So when she was on like the European, like on the tour, maybe she had to go back to his studio in Sweden. Like people will go, like performers will go to Sweden to be able to do that. Anyway, and she starts yelling to him, "I love songs. I love songs. I love songs." But she is like, she says making songs, right? Songs and like that. I think she even said at times like they show clips throughout her career in the studio. And once she was like, I just wrote this line like 15 minutes ago, so like let me do it again. But she said like it's a very important part of like her life, of what gives her life, like being able to like get through it, or you know what I mean? Like if you think about your life now, like what you feel is important for you to like get there. I'm sorry, my phone was like annoying me. Is it broken here? I'm um to me it's this. I would say doing this, like this is a very important part of like my life. I don't know how I remember her exact word, but I remember that's how I felt too. But anyway, when I hear about these guys and I'm making music and it's like I think for a lot of them it's like, yeah, you don't imagine life without being able to do that because you feel like it's necessary to help you get through it. And some people like you just can't stop. Like I tell myself, like, I don't know. I mean, uh, so for them maybe it's that, but if you want to make music, I bet that's the thing for you. If you had all these instruments or maybe a way to record things like that, um, can really help. Everybody, I feel, should have a creative outlet, but the music people is particularly on my mind at this moment. I asked George if he felt this was fair to the fish. I know it's called sport fishing, but I don't get where the sport comes in, I said. Perhaps you fished from a canoe, the tuna would stand a fairer chance. And hey, think how cool you look paddling back into the marina with a 4-foot tuna strapped alongside your kayak, like a hero from a Hemingway novel. George said fishing mellowed him out. In his younger days, he told me, he liked to go out for several days at a time with Bootsy Collins and a few tabs of LSD. One time they were close to the Bermuda Triangle and had a UFO encounter. He was dead serious. They were running away from a storm when a dense, whirling silver and gray cloud enveloped their boat, and blobs of mercury started spattering all over the deck. George thought they were being abducted. Bootsy was yelling that the space limousine was here to take them up to the mothership. They both stripped off their shirts and were dancing around the cockpit like maniacs, giggling incessantly as the blobs of mercury enveloped them. The Haitian charter skipper panicked and locked himself in his cabin getting drunk, and they had to steer the boat back to port themselves. I laughed and told him he'd experienced the phenomenon of bioluminescence. Bio what? He said. Bioluminescence. There are small plankton in the ocean that don't instantly re-emit the radiation they absorb. Microscopic organisms that suck up the sun rays during the day, but only release the light at night when they collide with something. In this case, the deck of your boat. It's called forbidden energy state. Is that true? That sounds really cool. What about the swirling cloud? He said. Probably a fog bank lit up by the full moon above it, or the last rays of the setting sun. George paused to reflect. Dolby, you ain't no fun, he said, and rolled himself another joint. The next day in the studio, I came up with a new persona. I was the space limousine driver, and I laid down a rap on George's record. He loved it. Now we having fun, he sang, and cranked the volume way up on the studio monitors. When the groove is in the pocket, George's face lights up. He bares his teeth and wiggles his ass. He shouted something inaudible about me coming on stage with him for a James Brown thing 2 weeks later. The James Brown thing turned out to be a testimonial concert in Washington, D.C. during the annual Black Urban Music Conference. Backstage at the auditorium, the P-Funk tribe was gathering for the sound check. Musicians, side players, and their families piled into the dressing room, hugging and reminiscing. Before long, it was plain that George owed most of them money from previous gigs. That's how I make sure they show up for the next show. George confided in me. Trouble is, now even James wants to get paid. George decided that in my guise as the space limousine driver, I was going to do guest vocals on the song Get On Up. I feel like being a sex machine. George's band had never performed this live, even though Bootsy had toured as James Brown's bass player and his older brother Catfish Collins had played rhythm guitar on the original track. Bizarrely, George asked me if I could walk Bootsy and Catfish through the changes, as I knew the structure pretty well. So a small Fender twin amp was set up in a corner of the green room, and they both plugged in. I said if there was an available keyboard on stage, I'd play the piano solo midway through the song. George scribbled sex machine in the middle of his set list. Because I'm on the scene like a sex machine. I'm not a fisherman, but is an electric rail not kind of cheating? Well, here's the thing. I think that um cheating is like sanctioned like so much in our society. Like the world, not just like in America. Like I mean, I obviously can't speak for everywhere, but I'd say much of, right? That um to such an extent it's considered okay that people actually get taken aback if you even like insinuate that that's what it is, that they're doing something that might be considered unacceptable to someone else, right? And you'll hear the phrase, well, everyone does it. That's normal. That's what the normal, right? Um, or what's the other one? Oh, and this. And if you're not, then you're stupid. Then you're just really dumb because everyone else, right? I see this with like it always takes me aback and it shocks me because when it's like um okay, if somebody considers themselves a content creator, which I never ever ever would consider myself that, and you guys know that. It's just you guys know why. But if they do, then I would bargain that they then would consider themselves okay with cheating, things like that, because look, they're putting themselves in a category of people that abides that a lot. Like for instance, I see this thing where with like AI, they'll have like AIs writing your titles or your pictures, like all these things. And if it becomes normalized in, say, your group because you consider yourself a content creator, right? Then if someone was to say, well, like, isn't that wrong? Isn't it's like, what do you mean? Others do it. Others do it, so it's not, right? Okay. So when you say about using like an electric line, as long as you can say, but others do it, right? Then it's, well, aren't I stupid if I don't? It's not really cheating if others do it. I don't know. I mean, that depends how you view it, I guess. Mm. The P-Funk all out on the stage and went into the first song. There were 12,000 people in the audience, and about three of us were Caucasian. It was an early show, and this was a business convention crowd, and the reaction was a little muted. Only a couple of isolated people in the audience were on their feet clapping and dancing. I was wearing a long linen coat, leather gauntlets, peaked chauffeur's cap, and goggles. standing at the side of the stage, listening to an atrociously bad mix at 1,000 decibels. It was very hard to make out where one song ended and the next began. I wasn't all that familiar with the Parliament Funkadelic repertoire, but each song was basically funk in the key of E. About half an hour into the set, I vaguely made out the words as the MC announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for the space limousine driver, aka Thomas Dolby." I don't know this, like, but maybe I shouldn't say this, but I'm gonna just say what it appears. It sounds like a Bowie ripoff. Like, I don't know. It sounds a lot more unoriginal than he thinks. The band launched into the famous Sex Machine groove, and I took center stage. The audience looked bewildered. As I waited for my vocal cue to come around, I glanced down in the front row. James Brown himself was sitting glaring up at me suspiciously. I had no choice but to break into my very best Queen's English. Get up, get on up, get up, get on up, yeah. Stay on the scene, chaps, like a sex machine, Cordelia. By the second verse, I was thrashing around like Sir Alec Guinness having a seizure. Astonishingly, by the time it got to the solo, most of the audience was on its feet, and a party atmosphere ensued. I streaked over to where a Fender Rhodes electric piano was set up at the side of the stage and launched into my solo. Shit, no sound. I thumped on the keyboard, fiddled with the volume knob, still nothing. I felt down back panel for an audio cord that was not even plugged in. I went berserk without thinking. I kneed the Rhodes over on its back and started kicking and stamping on it. For an instant, the thought flashed across my mind that this was what all those punk rock bands had wanted me to do in 1977. Even James Brown cracked a smile. By the time the set was over and the band filed back into the green room, which was now thick with marijuana smoke, I had regained my composure. Bootsy and Maceo Parker high-fived me, and Skeet Curtis gave me a chest bump. I walked out through the lobby at the convention center, and the throng parted for me reverentially. Damn, TD, someone called you. You're pretty funky, boy. Back in California, Gore, Fain, and Schwartz had submitted me as composer for a film adaptation of a classic Marvel comic book called Howard the Duck, produced by none other than George Lucas. The script called for several original songs, and Lucasfilm needed someone to coach a group of 4 young actresses to be a band. My new agents got with Andy Ferguson and cut a mouth-watering deal. They would need me on the set to work with the actors while I wrote the songs, and as yet they had not selected a composer for the instrumental score. So I went straight up to Skywalker Ranch to meet Lucas and review the storyboards, and set up my own room at the Sprockets facility in San Rafael. I was a fan of the comic books, and with George Lucas's track record, how could Howard the Duck possibly fail? The stars of the movie were Leah Thompson, best known as Marty McFly's mom from Back to the Future, and a talented but hitherto unknown actor called Tim Robbins. The budget was reputed to be huge, and a lot of it seemed to be going into the development of computerized animatronic duck suits for the central character, Howard. The 3-foot tall Howard was a potty-mouthed, cigar smoking waterfowl from another planet mistakenly brought to Earth via a teleportation accident. Howard was a var- Howard was variously played by several little people and child actors dressed in the duck suits. You remember? I've never heard of this. This sounds kind of funny. Just in the dark, a team of puppeteers worked his facial muscles with wireless handsets, but take after take was cut short because Howard's bill wouldn't open properly, or his eyeballs rotated in opposite direction. Oh, thank you, Rob. You're so sweet. Actually, that reminds me, I think I have like a slutty duck costume or like a rave costume that's like a duck. Yeah, I should wear that for you guys. It looks really cute on the package. I found it in my garage, so it could be fun. Every time Howard was on the set, there seemed to be some serious issue with his remote-controlled prosthetic head. Once, the shooting had to be wrapped mid-afternoon because one of the eyebrows went into a spasm and jerked skyward, ripping a 6-inch tear in his latex scalp. The more money that was sunk into its production, the more homogenized Howard seemed to become. Over 200 actors were auditioned to provide the on-screen voice of the duck. A committee of studio execs simply couldn't make up their minds. Even Robin Williams was asked to come in a second time for a callback, and Lucas himself was conspicuously absent from the proceedings. Still, I enjoyed hanging out with the cast and crew, and I loved cruising around Marin County as I got to know the San Francisco Bay Area. The movie was clearly losing its way behind schedule. My contract was extended by 10 weeks, so I decided I needed a nicer ride than my Silver Hertz rental car. I saw an ad for a 1972 Morris Minor Woody convertible that a 6'4" surfer dude was selling. It was covered in surf decals, and he would drive it up and down Highway 1 with his head and his board sticking up over the Morris's windshield. As the weeks went by, it became a common sight to see groups of suited, worried-looking Universal execs milling around the set. I tried in my small way to restore some coolness to the project by contributing quirky left field music cues with names like Duck Pate and Mutant Disney. But the producers didn't go for my eclectic approach to the score, and eventually I left Lucasfilm in a hurry, having been fired as composer for being too subversive. I was replaced by the great film composer John Barry, though they kept my songs in the movie, along with a brief on-screen cameo as a beatnik bartender. I plan to ship the Morris Minor convertible back to England and keep it as a summer car to complement my Jag. I feel like I'm getting the impression that like he is more he's difficult to work with, which doesn't mean um it doesn't mean anything of like his talent, but I feel like you know what they say, if like everybody you meet has a problem with you, there might be like something on your end that's a problem, right? Like there might be worth considering. I kind of feel You just said, "Oh, true subversive." Like, I bet it was more than that. Because how you flow, like, with the people you're working with creatively is important on the creative output often, you know? And not even just creative, like, I feel like in any job, in your team, how the team was working, you know? Um, and that might not be his fault or the way he is or the way he comes off, maybe. And also being opinionated, it's not always a bad thing, but again, how it can come off. Like maybe he comes off, oh yeah, condescending, know-it-all, sort of like Terry says, diva. Yeah. But if you're come out off that way, it can rub some people the wrong way, especially if they don't know you very well. I'm just thinking, because like, why does he keep being fired? And yeah, I plan to ship the Morris Minor convertible back to England and keep it as a summer car to complement my Jag. Somehow I never got around to organizing the export paperwork. 3 months later, there was a message on my answering machine in London to call the transportation manager at Lucas. I knew he would be wanting to know what to do with my Morris, now presumably sitting abandoned in the parking lot at Lucas. So I erased his message. Many years later, a business associate told me how she and her kids had been on a walking tour of Skywalker Ranch during the post production of Star Wars Episode 1 Phantom Menace. The tour guide had taken the visitors past the Foley stage. He pointed out a twisted mass of metal and rubber lurking in one corner, surrounded by microphone stands. And over there, you will see the remains of a Morris Minor once owned by Thomas Dolby. It is regularly attacked with crowbars and baseball bats when we need to create the sound of road wrecks and space battles. That was probably about the best thing to come out of the Howard experience. It was a lesson in collective self delusion. The film studio and the entire cast and crew, myself included, managed to maintain our belief that we had made a decent film right up until the weekend of the Hollywood premiere. When real people and film critics started to attend screenings of the movie, it was universally panned in the press as a $50 million waste of time, and that was back in the days when 50 million was a lot of money. Um, yeah, I'm not understanding what happened to the car totally. So export paperwork, but why was it on his lot? Like, if it was his car, like, why didn't he take it? And like, I could understand even if he was like thrown out, right? Was he not there at the time, or was he banned from the premises? I don't know. Could it? It's on his ranch, okay. Many years later. Yeah, I'm. Okay, 3 months later, there was a message on my answering machine in London. So he's in London to call the transportation manager at Lucas. So to call there. And they would have wanted to know what to do with it because it's been sitting there. And then he just erased the message. Hmm. So did he just, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm trying to think of like if you had like a child and you like abandoned them at the fire station, like you like leave it there and I don't know, like relinquished it or because he left the country. Yeah. Okay. That was probably okay. Perhaps as a consolation for being fired from the movie score, they told me I could write and direct the MTV video for the title song. The video had an elaborate premise involving a rock concert by the movie's all-female rock band, Cherry Bomb, and the centerpiece of their stage show, a 20-foot high pyrotechnic egg. I was looking forward to the chance of directing Leah Thompson and Tim Robbins, and I selected Limelight Films LA branch as the production company. The budget was surprisingly large, $250,000, approximately 10 times what I'd had available when I made the clip for She Blinded Me with Science. But during the run up to the shoot, I got an interesting insight into exactly how the US music industry moved money around. I was in Limelight's offices on Melrose Avenue, working with the line producer who was interviewing key members of the production team. Listed on the proposed crew sheet was a set decorator whom I'll call Joey Gonzalez. When the producer asked him what his rate would be, he said calmly that it was $6,500 per day, which would add up to $26,000 for the whole 4-day shoot. You must mean $650 per day, right? The producer said. No, $6,500. Just check with blank at the record label. Here's his number. The producer duly called the number and was put straight through. Yep, said blank. That's the correct figure. I accidentally stumbled on one of the many ways record companies laundered money they needed to bribe radio programmers and buy radio play. This was how they got large lumps of petty cash off their books without alerting the attention of the DOJ. Gonzalez, the set decorator, would presumably be given a small bonus for laundering the money through his account, and the rest would end up in a brown envelope. The Limelight line producer did not bat an eyelid and wrote the daily figure of $6,500 into his account's ledger without a word. This record company was one of Limelight's larger clients. Far be it from him to rock the boat. He doesn't really say how he knows that, though. Like, I can buy it as a theory, but I can also just as easily buy it that this guy got paid a lot of money to be a set decorator to work on the production. Like, a lot of crew gets a lot of money. Yeah, 26,000 for the 4-day shoot. I could buy that too. How do you know that? I was sickened to find myself a part of their ugly crime ring, but we were only days away from the shoot. To blow the whistle at this stage would have meant canning the whole production and the loss of work for more than 30 people. I struggled with my conscience. What would it really accomplish? It was not as if one individual exposing a single instance of corruption would bring down the whole rotten house of cards. And I would probably just get myself ostracized, blacklisted across the whole music industry. It served as a powerful reminder. This was not an industry I really wanted to belong to. George Clinton cheered me up once again when I bumped into him at a Capitol Records listening party. He said how pleased he was with the way the James Brown concert and his album had turned out, and suggested he'd like to do something for me to return the favor. I had an idea for a song and video called May the Cube Be With You. We enlisted the help of my old friend Len Lovich, the Funkadelic Rhythm section, and the Brecker Brothers on horns. And our makeshift supergroup recorded the track at Battery Studios under the name Dolby's Cube. The MTV video for the song included a series of short tableaux involving celebrity lookalikes. I helped pick out the actors from a casting catalog based on their looks. In one scene, we reenacted the famous love scene from Some Like It Hot, set on a millionaire's yacht. I was in the Tony Curtis role, and I got to make out with a Marilyn Monroe look-alike on a couch, with my glasses all steamed up. While we shot our scene, they were busy setting up the next one, in which a leather-capped Marlon Brando impersonator sat astride a vintage Triumph and unwrapped a pack of butter. In a break between takes, the Brando look-alike turned to me and said, "Tom, do you remember me?" I couldn't place him. It turned out to be a guy called Marcus, whom I'd been friends with at a boarding school in the English countryside when we were both age 10. I was amazed that anyone else from that stuffy establishment had ended up in show business. We renewed our friendship. Marcus had an interesting story. In his 20s, he headed to Los Angeles to work as an actor, but he couldn't make a living on his looks and talent alone and had to fill in as a personal trainer to the stars. He'd gotten close to one of the biggest divas in showbiz, very close. For several years, he lived in her guest house in Malibu, ostensibly as her trainer and assistant. She was extremely gorgeous, and when she grew tired of him, he was able to afford to buy himself a ranch way out in the mountains where he lived a hermit-like existence, teaching local kids about Native American history, occasionally renting the property out as a movie location. He adopted, or rather he was adopted by, a lone white wolf to whom he became very attached. The wolf was, Marcus said, the love of his life. I'm sorry, what? Adopting a white wolf? What? Or he was adopted by? That's so weird. And by the way, I don't understand this video. Okay. So he's a Tony Curtis role from Some Like It Hot, making out with Marilyn Monroe. Do you know what Tony Curtis's role was in Some Like It Hot? He was playing a woman, or he was Marilyn Monroe's friend as a fellow woman in Some Like It Hot. He didn't make it out with Marilyn Monroe in that movie. It's funny. It's a great movie. It's very funny. But I mean, that's not what happened. So, and then even weirder, why is Marlon Brando with a stick of butter? Marlon Brando was from The Godfather, right? Wouldn't he be with like a gun? No, an orange. I see. This is the thing. He acts like he has such genius at making these videos, and I'm a little like, I'm glad that you see yourself that way. You got to have confidence. But that's a little delulu. When you reconnect with someone from your distant past and listen to their account of the parallel existence they've led during the intervening years, it's like holding up a mirror to your own life. As I drove back to LA after an afternoon in the mountains with Marcus, I thought about my career and where I was heading with my life. I'd become isolated from myself as a result of my revulsion with the inner workings of the record industry. It was flattering to get call ups from my childhood heroes, but they were distracting me from my proper path. It was really in my own music that my passions lay. Even the rigidity of my contract could not prevent me from writing and recording great songs or performing them in front of my fans. I knew it would soon be time to get back to the source, to the music I loved the most. I still had yet to write a great instrumental score for a great movie. The opportunity arose when the controversial but highly respected British director Ken Russell approached me with a project he was working on entitled Gothic, the true story of the night that Frankenstein and Dracula were born. Lord Byron, Percy, and Mary Shelley, and the sinister Dr. Polidori were sequestered in Byron's villa on Lake Geneva, where they explored their darkest fantasies and nightmares under the influence of laudanum or other hallucinogens. That doesn't sound like the true story at all. It was a splendid opportunity for me to hone my chops as an orchestral composer. And it was one of the first feature film scores to feature a mixture of real and sampled orchestral instruments, which is nowadays very commonplace. I visited the Gothic film set to get a feel for the movie. The production company was Virgin Films, a brand new Richard Branson venture. The budget was tight, and to save money, Ken Russell was using his own country estate in Cumbria to double for Byron's Villa Diacanti. Many of the crew were upgraded from their usual roles. So, for example, the Dolly Grip was working as the focus puller, a focus puller as the camera operator, and so on, while others had accepted reduced fees trying to make the movie into features from music videos or commercials. In his younger days, Ken Russell was considered the enfant terrible of British cinema. With a fearsome reputation as a tyrant on the set, his tantrums were legendary. The Gothic crew was on tenterhooks for the first few weeks of the production. Every time a lighting stand got knocked over or there was a hair on the gate, people would glance Ken's way, expecting a violent outburst. But Ken just closed his eyes and counted to 10. There were whispers that perhaps he was mellowing in his old age. I spent 2 days watching the director, cast, and crew at work. One scene in the script called for a parrot on a perch. In the whole north of England, there was a single movie parrot handler, and he was duly employed for half a day. He showed up in his parrot handler van with a lovely scarlet macaw that was much admired by all. I heard that parrots bites. I don't know if that's true, but but they don't just they bite nasty. Like you don't want to get bit by a parrot. Mm. Yeah. Marilyn looked like not even the real one. Well, Marilyn died in the 60s, sadly. She was only in her 30s. Uh, no, yeah, they bite. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, see, you know what, Terry, that shows me, and it says that you have special genes, like a parrot magic. You have been chosen through your ancestral line to control the parrots. Make Jerry, write him a comic book character. I spent 2 days watching the director, cast, and crew work. One scene in the script called for a parrot on a perch. In the whole north of oh wait, north of England, there was a single movie parrot handler, and he was duly employed for half a day. He showed up in his parrot handler van with a lovely scarlet macaw that was much admired by all. Gabriel Bryn and Natasha Richardson were psyching themselves up for the scene. The cameraman framed the shot, which required the parrot to sit at the left hand end of her perch, just as Ken yelled action. When the actors began their dialogue, the parrot started to waddle sideways out of frame. Cut, yelled Ken. Do it again. The parrot was reset, and the camera rolled again with the exact result. Cut. Do it again. Midway through the third take, the unruly parrot sidestepped once more out of frame. At that moment, all of Ken's pent up rage from the previous few weeks boiled over. He walked over to the parrot handler and grabbed him by the shoulders, physically shaking him and spitting every known expletive. The poor parrot was sacked on the spot, and its perch was removed from the close ups. For the remaining weeks of the production, the crew was constantly on the alert. Some mornings, word would go around to look out because Ken had PHS, Parrot Handler Syndrome. Ken Russell was a man with an immense knowledge of the classics. As a young director, he made many films about the lives of the great composers. He liked the Fairlight CMI-driven score I submitted, but said he wanted the real thing for some of the main cues. Virgin Films was reluctant to spend the money, but I was keen to work with a real orchestra and excited to give it a try. So I offered to pay for the additional recording out of my own fee. I worked with an orchestrator and conductor, John Fitty, to convert my cues, and the London Symphony Orchestra was booked for a full day session at Angel Studios. We started on the dot of 9 a.m. An aspiring French horn player himself, Ken Russell looked forward to this part of the filmmaking process. He and editor Mike Bradsell were already slumped in a deep couch at the back of the control room, getting stuck into a crate of Burgundy and quietly comparing notes on the latest classical record releases. They look like a pair of garden gnomes. This new Deutsche Grammophon recording of Mahler's Second, Ken whispered, is clearly superior to the 1978 Bernstein production. In everything other than the Andante section, I'm inclined to agree, mumbled Mike. I looked at the clock. 2 minutes to 9. British orchestral musicians are highly unionized. Many of them were chatting, sipping their tea, or reading the Daily Mirror. Their instruments were out of their cases, but the music on their stands was unopened. As the minute hand reached the hour, the conductor tapped his baton and began with the first violin. The whole orchestra tuned up. Open your scores to cue 1M2 if you please, he said, and he counted them in. The orchestra began to play, and I marveled as the sounds of my composition rose up all around me. It was wonderful to hear my music come to life, played by musicians who had devoted a lifetime to their craft. I wandered between their chairs, admiring the fine acoustics of the Angel Studios' vaulted ceilings, but every few bars something was not quite right. I had given the orchestrator my Fairlight sequences to transcribe, and not being a trained musician, I'd had no way of checking his work. I took mental notes as they played, and at the end of the first cue, there were a few issues I needed to point out. I walked over to the cellos. Okay, you know how that bit goes, da-da, da-da, just after the timpani roll. Bar 35, lads, said one of the cellists, checking his score. That high top note, you're playing an A sharp, right? That should be a B natural. Yes, B natural. The cellist looked dubious, but penciled in the change. Then I went over to the woodwinds and made another set of changes, struggling again for the right terminology. By now, it was obvious to these guys I was completely untrained. I thought I heard a slight snigger somewhere in the back row. I asked the conductor for another take of the cue. This time it was a lot closer to what I wanted. We began to work through each of the cues with many faltering stops and starts. As lunchtime approached, we were terribly behind schedule. 30 cues to get through in a single day, and we barely completed 8. But we were making progress, and aside from the minor corrections, I thought it all sounded lovely. I gave a couple of pointers to the percussionist in the ninth cue and asked the conductor to count in another take. I'm afraid not, Mr. Dolby, sir, said the first violin. Why not? Well, it's a minute to one, sir. We go to lunch at 1, and this is a 2-minute cue. Really? We can't just add a few minutes to the end of the lunch break? I'm sorry, Mr. Dolby, that's the rules. I was dumbfounded. The orchestra members were already starting to set their instruments back in their cases. Suddenly, the doors of the studio burst open and in strode Ken Russell, red in the face, fuming. He marched into the middle of the orchestra, the veins visibly bulging out of his neck. You bastards, he screamed. You have this wonderful gift from God to play your instruments, and all you can think about is your fucking tea break. Now cut this young man some slack and finish your fucking cue. Jeez. And finish it they did. After this brief outburst of PHS, Ken and I sat down for a sandwich in the cafeteria. I'm sorry you got a bit hot and bothered in there, Ken, I said. Well, it did the bloody trick, Dolby, didn't it? Gift from that's so weird. It's like you're saying I thought I heard someone say, like, I haven't seen this P. Diddy documentary. I'm afraid, like, I hear it's like everybody's watching it, you know? So, like, I heard a lot of things about it, but it's got to be dark, right? But one of the things I've heard is, like, I don't want it to be so upsetting to me, you know? My sister saw it. And anyway, so that it's, he was very jealous and he was very jealous of people's talent, people being far more talented than him. And I've never been envious of talent before. Maybe I view talent differently, but um, so for his view here, it's like you have this gift from God. So it's like, um, okay, okay. I get complimented a lot on my kitty, let's call it, right? So let's say my kitty, I didn't do anything to deserve this pretty cat, right? But I get complimented so much, so should I share it more? Is it like Stella? You've been given this. You didn't earn that kitty. You were given that from God. And you think you should get a tea break? No, go show that kitty some more. Like I don't know. It's like, oh, I don't know, really consider it that way. Like I don't know. Back in my flat in Fulham, I was interviewed about the upcoming movie by a reporter claiming to be from an important Australian music magazine. The interview had been set up through EMI Records. This was not unusual, so perhaps I was too trusting when I let her visit me in my home. I got a bit suspicious when I left the room to fetch the coffee and came back to find her fingering papers on my desk. 2 weeks later, I received a letter from a law firm representing Dolby Laboratories. the audio noise reduction company. They had found out about the upcoming Gothic score and were threatening to sue me for passing off my music as a Dolby Labs product. I was born with the family name Robertson. I acquired the nickname Dolby while at boarding school, where I was always the geeky kid who messed around with gadgets. I built my own crystal radio set to listen to Radio Caroline in bed at night. I was the projectionist for the school film club. When portable cassette machines first came out, I used to have my Philips cassette recorder constantly slung over my shoulder and a pair of bulky headphones on my head. The high-end cassette recorders of the era had to have Dolby noise reduction. My friends started to call me Dolby. It was just one of those childhood nicknames that stuck. Yeah, I forget if even if his name is even Thomas. Let's see. I guess it's like it would be like I'm trying to think of what it would be a modern thing at the time. 'Cause I don't know I'm not enough of a nerd. I feel like I want to ask Terry because I feel like, oh, it'd be like calling him Terry and then like a last name that's like one of his nerd things. But I don't even know what all these nerd things are called to nickname him that. Like, in the early days of punk rock, I had gone to see Tom Robinson Band at the Red Cow in Hammersmith. I saw Tom afterwards and introduced myself. I'm Tom Robertson, and I'm a musician too. Sooner or later, one of us is going to have a problem. We agreed that whoever made it first, the other would have to change his name. And we shook hands on it. 3 months later, Tom Robertson made the charts with his smash hit 2468 Motorway, and I changed my name to Thomas Dolby. I had a lot of respect for Dr. Ray Dolby, who had achieved so much in the area of audio technology and marketing. Since the late 60s, consumers had been willing to pay $10 or $20 more for a cassette machine with the Dolby logo on the front. Cassette quality in the early days suffered from high levels of unwanted high frequency noise, and popping in the Dolby button certainly improved the experience. But as recordings got brighter in the 70s and 80s, using that button tended to remove good musical content, like the sibilance in the vocals, the crispness of the strings, or the clarity of the cymbals. Nobody really knew why the button was still there. Dolby's marketing department had clearly done an admirable job of preserving its perceived value. Some of Dolby Labs' original patents were beginning to expire around the world, and cassette tape was on the way out. The company wanted to refocus on the world of film and home theater sound, and they weren't too pleased when they saw my name on a cinema marquee advertising Gothic. Now they were offering me a choice. I could either accept a lump sum payment of $500,000 to change my name, or they would immediately file suit against me. I was proud of what I had accomplished, proud and obstinate. $500,000 was not going to persuade me to drop my name. It was hard to imagine a dollar figure that would have made me change my mind. I replied to their letter that I had no intention of complying with their demands. During the following few weeks, wherever I was in the world, they would manage to find me. One time, I was in Los Angeles staying in a friend's guest house in the Hollywood Hills. The phone rang by the phone by the bed rang, and it was two of Dolby Labs lawyers calling on speakerphone. I have no idea how they obtained the number. They said they were willing to up the offer to $1 million, but they were simultaneously preparing to file suit in the California courts, and this was my ultimate deadline. I didn't appreciate the carrot and stick routine, even less the invasion of my privacy, so I told them to get stuffed and hung up. In the fall of 1986, Dolby Labs filed for an injunction to prevent me using the name Thomas Dolby, claiming I was deliberately creating confusion with their brand. In the initial court hearing, it was clear that Dolby Labs had been collecting information to try and discredit me. One of their witnesses was the so-called Australian music journalist whom I let into my home in London, actually a private investigator on their payroll. She provided evidence about my living conditions, described how my clothes were strewn about the house, and they had somehow obtained a copy of my bank statement. I was not present at the hearing, but the transcript of the dialogue between their attorney and Judge Samuel Conti was quite amusing. I'm paraphrasing here. Are you seriously telling me, mister, that a consumer has walked into a record store and purchased a Thomas Dolby album in the belief that it was a Dolby reduction unit? Well, no, Your Honor. What then? Attorney shuffles papers. We have a record here of a phone call received by Dolby Labs switchboard from a music fan asking to speak to Thomas. Oh, come on, said the judge. Is that the best you can do? Judge Conti denied the injunction and said he found no evidence of damage caused to the Dolby Labs brand. I received an initial bill from my lawyers for $104,000. So far, the legal profession were the only ones doing well out of the situation. Dolby Labs wrote again to say they were very pleased with the outcome of the initial hearing. However, they were willing to sit down and discuss an out-of-court agreement and put an end to the proceedings. I met Dr. Ray Dolby for the first time in a basement conference room in Lincoln's Inn Fields. We sat face to face at a long table. There were at least 7 lawyers in the room, and I dreaded to think what the combined hourly fees would add up to. Thankfully, it didn't take long for them to formulate a letter agreement stating that Dolby Labs would drop the suit provided I undertook not to use the name Dolby on its own, or in larger letters than the name Thomas. This seemed reasonable to me, and we were on the point of wrapping up the meeting when Dr. Ray, who had been silent up to that point, locked eyes with me and launched into this bizarre monologue. You pop stars think you're so special. You jet set around the world, lying by swimming pools with your groupies and your drugs and booze. I have worked to get myself where I am today. I have built up my little company from nothing to the global brand it has become. How dare you try to cash in on my good name? I stood up without a word and left the room. Though the Dolby Labs court case ended in a stalemate, it temporarily cleaned me out. Geez, I mean, it's 1986, $104,000. And people tell me, get more lawyers, more lawyers. I'm going to be in so much debt. Oh, God. Ugh. When I sat down with my accountant at the end of 1986, he told me my finances were in bad shape. He also pointed out that I'd spent nearly 8 months of the previous 12 living in hotels in America. If 1987 is going to go the same way, he said, you'd be better off declaring that you're spending a year outside the UK. Then you won't have to pay any tax in either country. It's all perfectly legal, but you can only do it once. The expatriate scheme didn't sound like a bad idea at all. I could use the time to record and mix some tracks for the new Prefab Sprout album, From Langley Park to Memphis, in some of the great LA studios. What's more, I felt a year abroad in a new setting might spark some new songs of my own. A great friend of mine named Grant Morris was living up above Beechwood Canyon near the Hollywood sign. While he made his name as a screenwriter, he told me there was a house for rent just around the corner from him on the crest of a hill with its very own pool and panoramic view over the city. I took a year's lease on it, sight unseen, with the intention of setting up a small studio and writing material for my third album. Grant was a craggy New Zealander who seemed to know everybody. For the first half of my year in LA, he and I were a pair of crazy bachelors, living the LA life to the full. We drove around in a pink 1966 Mustang convertible that I'd hired from Rent a Wreck. I helped him pitch ideas for feature films, and he helped me with my lyrics. He was extremely gregarious and possessed a wicked sense of humor. In cafes and bars or at the supermarket, he would get talking to random people and invite them up to his house for a party. He would spin impossible yarns about who we were and what we did on a given day. I was a rally car driver and he was a top plastic surgeon from Cedar Sinai on another. He was from the Israeli consulate and I was the heir to the twist tie fortune. I would just sit there cringing, expecting Grant to end up with a black eye or for us both to get arrested. But somehow we would always just end up at a rowdy party back at his house in the hills, trailing an unknown French film director, the elderly checkout clerk from the Mayfair market, a Guatemalan pool guy, and a couple of waitresses from the Beechwood Cafe. The one thing I never understood was Grant's choice of girlfriends. With one or two exceptions, he seemed to make disastrous choices and get hitched up to the worst possible women. So I was very pleased when he introduced me one afternoon to his latest date. I'd popped around the corner to his house in the middle of the day, expecting to find him working on a script. Sitting there in his living room was a gorgeous brunette. They'd been set up on a blind date by a mutual friend. We chatted a bit, and it was clear she was not like the others. She was warm, witty, and totally unself-conscious. Her name was Kathleen Beller. She was an actress, and unlike many of Grant's friends in Hollywood, she actually had a successful career in show business. I was delighted that he had finally met someone special. Later that evening, I phoned Grant, excited to hear how his date went with Kathleen. Oh, she's perfectly nice, he said, but there's no real spark there. Moron, I thought to myself. Well, Grant might be willing to let this one get away, but I was not about to. A few weeks later, when the same mutual friend, Joan Aguado, invited us to dinner, I asked if Kathleen could come along. As Kathleen tells it, she was in the midst of a bout of bronchitis and had just gone to bed with a fever when she got the call from her friend Joni saying that the guy she'd met at Grant's house wanted to ask her out. But Kathleen had met two guys at that day, me and Grant's roommate Dave, and she was only willing to get dressed and come out for the one with the pointy shoes. Happily, the one with the pointy shoes was me. At dinner in Los Feliz, we eyed each other shyly. Back at my place later that evening, I brought her hot tea on my grandmother's china tea set, and we sat up and talked for hours. Within a week, we were in love and inseparable. Although her name and face were not familiar to me, Kathleen had been acting since she was a teenager. When she got her first break on a daytime TV soap, she had small parts in many feature films, including The Godfather Part 2, in which she played an Italian vaudeville theater owner's daughter, sharing a scene with Robert De Niro. She'd received a Golden Globe nomination for Best Supporting Actress in Promises in the Dark, but was probably most famous for her role on Dynasty, at that time the number one TV show in the world. She deeply regretted that role because although it made her rich for a couple of seasons, her life became very difficult. She suddenly found herself famous for a type of show that seemed to care only about how she wore her clothes and not how she delivered her lines. And hardcore Dynasty fans were fanatical, showing little respect for an actor's privacy. There was a period when the only time she could go to the supermarket was while the show was actually airing, so she would be left alone to do her shopping. Often we'd be out sharing a quiet candlelit dinner, and she'd have the fork halfway to her mouth when a stranger's hand would wrap around her wrist. Oh my God, girls, get over here. It's Kirby Colby from Dynasty. My own fans, by comparison, were harmless. You could spot one a mile off when he made a beeline for us in a public place. He would probably have an anorak and skin problems. Excuse me, Mr. Dolby, he would mumble. I was wondering, I've got an Oberheim OBXA and I want to work out how to sync it to the master clock of my emulator 3. Have you any advice? Kathleen was never less than civil and friendly toward even her pushiest fans. She always arrived on the set 10 minutes ahead of her call time with her lines memorized and made sure she said hello to each of the electricians and carpenters and props people using their first names, even when her script was crap or the director was an idiot. She would find a way to make her lines real and nail them, take after take. I told her I was amazed by her patience and professionalism. The way I see it, she said, it's a collaboration. The whole thing between the actor and the fan. You wouldn't be where you are without your audience. They often imagine you to be the way you are on screen, but they find you're only flesh and blood. Kathleen's generosity and compassion were a breath of fresh air. In the music industry, I'd always been encouraged to keep fans at an arm's length to maintain the invisible wall that separates stars from mere mortals. While many celebrities do buy into that and behave in a way that perpetuates the illusion, Kathleen saw right through it. She was friendly and civil, even to the lowliest busboy or valet parking attendant. She was never starstruck, even in the presence of massive celebrities and the super rich. She had acquired a group of friends over the years who did not judge each other by the box office receipts of their latest movie. When she was only 17, she had landed a small part in Francis Ford Coppola's Godfather sequel, the movie that made Robert De Niro a household name. Kathleen was a young and impressionable actress and was blown away by De Niro's dashing looks and utter commitment to his craft. In the weeks she spent on the film set in Little Italy, she developed a major crush on him. Her heart was all aflutter when Mr. De Niro invited her out for lunch one day. A chauffeured limousine showed up, and she climbed in the back with De Niro, still in costume, and Frank Severo, who played the part of the hoodlum Jenko. She'd never been in a limo before. Wouldn't one of you like to sit in the front with your friend? She said, indicating the chauffeur. They drove to an Italian family restaurant that was empty, other than a central table set for three. De Niro had it booked out. Each place setting came with its own waiter. Prior to his move into the acting world, Frank Severo was reportedly a bona fide New York wise guy, born in Sicily and brought up in Brooklyn. It was rumored that he was permanently armed and carried his entire net worth on his person in cash at all times. Even when the camera was rolling, filmmakers like Coppola and Scorsese loved to have Frank around just to make sure everything was authentic. De Niro ordered for her from the menu before turning to Severo and conversing quietly in Italian. Though her film character was Italian, she didn't understand the language herself, and had to learn her lines phonetically. Every now and then during the meal, De Niro would turn to Kathleen to check if the food was to her liking or if her glass needed refilling, but he barely said a word to her. The meal ended and the limo took her back to the hotel. Next morning, Francis Coppola noticed her looking distraught. He took her aside. She broke into tears and confessed that she had a big crush on De Niro, but that their lunch date turned out to be a disaster. Coppola put a fatherly hand on her shoulder and said, Kathy, it's not Bobby you've got a crush on. It's the young Vito Corleone. There is no Robert De Niro. I was amazed when Kathleen told me this story, but I caught something she'd missed. I knew that De Niro would totally inhabit his movie roles, living the character 24 hours a day, even to the point of spending his off days playing out storylines that were not fully explored in the script. I'd read that when he was filming Taxi Driver, he used to drive around the New York streets at night picking up real fares. One night, he reportedly picked up a wannabe actor. The actor said, Geez, only last year you won an Oscar and already you're back driving a cab? During Kathleen's scene in Godfather Part 2, Vito Corleone and his sidekick Jenko go to a theater matinee with the intention of inviting her out to lunch. They get into an altercation with Don Benucci, whom Corleone later assassinates. It was clear to me that De Niro was merely playing at the lunch date that might have been. I was deeply in love with this woman. She was witty, good natured, and fond of books and travel. She had a natural beauty that did not rely on cosmetics or fine clothes. We were both hardworking professionals, surrounded by Hollywood bullshit, but in search of some balance in our lives. Her tolerance and common sense rubbed off on me right away. Here was someone who understood the pressures on an artist in the public eye, yet shared my pragmatism about showbiz. We were like peas in a pod. When we announced our engagement at a party in late 1986, none of our friends were remotely surprised. So my year out in the USA became a permanent move. Kathleen split her time between her place in Laurel Canyon and my rental above Beechwood, and I started to look for an LA-based band for my third album and national tour. Well, that seems to be a good place to end it for tonight. I actually kind of understand the connection there with the um because I myself I'm like I've heard Dolby before and he works in music and it was like kind of thinking was it related to that or the cassette player was something like that, but what I mean is like but I'm not very smart about these things, like when I heard of Tesla I was like is this related to Tesla, like the dude? But anyway, thank you, Jerry. um I actually understand because he went in music, but then I kind of think, but that could still be his last name. Like people used to always say to me, like, "Are you related to like Rod Stewart, like John Stewart, like some?" No, like so it could just be a last name, like it was that guy's last name too. I mean, um, as long as you're not saying that that's yes, I am. Like, yeah, that's my you know my cassette player. I invented that, whatever. Um, but I can see being a little frustrated actually. I mean, um, but it's a screen name. You have to have I mean, because you would be, I mean, in acting, you have to have, everyone has to be in the union, a unique name. So it would make sense with music too if they would do that. But anyway, my wrist, sometimes I'm like, can you see the bruise there? Um, when I touch it, it hurts really bad. Anything. It just like really scares me as it sinks in. Like I look to move my arm and it's like because how clumsy I am and how I could like fall. And I'm not gonna have health insurance next year at all. It's already like, let's see, tomorrow's Christmas Eve. They're probably not, and then you get Christmas and you get the week, and it's already like next year. Ow. And I can't. Anyway, like I'm not gonna be able to do I just hold my dog and I'm scared. There's another reason to be scared about. It is what it is. I don't. Uh, all right. Yeah, I'll be here tomorrow if I'm, still allowed here tomorrow. So then I will see you. I love you. Uh, sorry. Good night.